Welcome to San Diego Oasis and the 8th annual Get Connected Technology Fair for the 50 plus. We are humbled to have received so many notes from you, telling us how much you have learned during the last 2 days. Today's theme is online security, and over the next 3 hours, we will learn practical tips on staying safe online and at home. In between learning, we will take a few minutes to stretch and to get to know our sponsors. Thanks to their generosity, this technology learning event is accessible to all of us. Mr. Bicep, the muscle man of technology, will close the day by giving away some of his favorite technology tools. You have to stay with us and be part of the fun. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Brent McCarty, President of ESET North America.
Hi there, I'm Brent McCarty, President of ESET North America, and I'd like to welcome you to Day 3 of the San Diego Oasis Technology Fair. For those of you who have not heard of ESET, we are one of the largest cybersecurity companies in the world, with our North American headquarters located right here in San Diego. We create security software for all types of connected devices so that you can stay safe from hackers and cybercriminals. Whether it is your smartphone, your laptop, the servers of your business, or even your smart TV in your living room, cybercriminals are always looking for vulnerabilities to exploit in order to gain access to their targets. And many times, their targets end up being you. Did you know that 1 in 4 US adults are victims of cybercrime? Now, that 25% statistic shouldn't be surprising because hackers are attacking computers and networks every 39 seconds. I realize that in most movies, hackers are often portrayed as hoodie-wearing, basement-dwelling, pizza-eating teenagers. However, in reality, most of the hacks and breaches of corporate networks involve teams of well-organized and well-funded individuals. They use all kinds of tricks and tools depending on what they are after. Now, I don't say all that to scare you. At ESET, we believe that everyone should be able to enjoy their technology safely. And my hope is that after today's presentations, you'll be more informed about how ESET can protect yourself. You'll be more informed about how you can protect yourself and how ESET can protect you. And most importantly, your data from cyber criminals. In just a moment, you'll be hearing from ESET's Chief Security Evangelist, Tony Anscombe. Tony has over 20 years of cybersecurity experience and has spoken to audiences around the world. Today, he's going to be speaking to all of you about 3 interesting topics. First up, he'll be presenting a very important topic, identity theft. Second, he's going to be talking about dating apps and social media. And third, he's going to be presenting on how to protect your home from cyber criminals. So with all of that, I hope you'll learn a little bit more about cybersecurity, using technology safely, a little bit more about ESET, and how to protect yourself. Tony, over to you.
Hi, I'm Tony Anscombe. Welcome to this webinar on identity theft. I'm a chief security evangelist for cybersecurity company ESET, who make anti-malware products to keep us safe on our devices. If you've got questions about identity theft, about this presentation, or you've got some issue, feel free to reach out to me. Here's my email address and here's my Twitter handle as well. If you don't want to ask the question at the end of the presentation because it's of personal nature or you just don't like sharing questions in public, feel free to drop me an email. So what is identity theft? Well, it's when somebody uses your personal information, such as your social security number or other details about you, to commit fraud or a criminal act. And let's be really clear, they do this for monetary gain typically. Because it's a business and it can have some rich rewards, which we're going to get back to as we go through this presentation. Now, how prevalent is the issue? Well, a Harris poll estimated 60 million Americans have been affected by identity theft. So that's roughly 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 of us. And it's not just the adult population that gets identity theft issues either. An identity thief can steal the identity of a child, because if they've got a social security number, then actually they can go and commit the same monetary gain type fraud against the child. What we don't want to do is get our kids to a point where they apply for a driver's license only to find they've already been banned. Now, how do they gather information? Well, the obvious one here is a stolen wallet or purse. The information we carry around in our pockets, in our wallets. You've got credit cards and driver's licenses, you've got your address, and obviously there's monetary gain if you've got some dollar bills in there as well. But that's the more traditional way of somebody stealing your identity. That's why you should never have PIN numbers and things written down, and certainly not stored in your wallet. Stealing or redirecting mail. Here you've got the mail. A lot of people have got the mailboxes with the flip down front, and the mail goes in and you collect the mail, and there's no real security around the mail. So there's actually this physical stealing of mail. There's also the redirection of mail. So if an identity thief wants to actually intercept your mail, potentially they may actually go onto USPS and ask them to redirect the mail to another address or a PO box somewhere. Now, the picture here, the legs sticking out the trash, the garbage can there, very funny, but it's real, unfortunately. Dumpster diving. Those identity thieves that are really committed to this, don't just live online, may actually go through your trash. So, there's rich information in there. If you think about all the things you put in the trash, maybe bank statements or personal letters, or even letters from medical institutions. All these may have account numbers on them. They may have your name, address, date of birth. There may be lots of information you can glean from these, or information where you can go off and find out further information because what you know on there already. So make sure that you're looking after your trash, and we'll come back to that about the proactive steps in just a moment. The two things that we're going to deal with today is the internet and data breaches. The internet is a rich source, unfortunately. We all share too much. There's lots of information laying around on there about each and every one of us. And of course, that information at times is subject to data breaches, unfortunately, where some cyber criminal gets in and steals a big chunk of data off a company and it gets sold on the dark web or misused against us. Now, what can an identity thief do? Well, but unfortunately, too much. They can open new lines of credit and bank accounts, so open actually new accounts by using your identity. And if you think about that, when you go into a store next time, they turn around and try and get you to take on a store card. Pretty much all you need is your driver's license, social security number, and you're off and running, because it can validate your address, and they look up your credit file based on social security number. So with those two pieces of information, actually an identity thief can significantly come and harm you. They can change addresses on existing accounts if they know the security questions and such like. Then they could actually get your address changed, so they can then start intercepting that mail and doing something with it. They could then order replacement cards. That could even be done physically in a branch, and I'll give you an example of that as we go through. They could take control of your cell phone. And we're going to talk about that one in more detail as well. But that is a really, really damaging piece of technology to lose control of. And when we get to that, I'll explain in more detail. And they may even be able to forge checks as well. So, yeah, a shout out to the more legacy view on this as well. Because forging checks, while it's not very electronic and digital, of course, it's just the same. It can have the same effect of taking money out of your bank account. So what about the information we share? Well, I'm going to use actually an example rather than preach to you about what you should and shouldn't be sharing. I'm going to use an example. I have a friend who participated in one of these a presentation I gave about a year or so ago. My friend, who we call her Lucy, she actively looks after and protects her location and privacy. Now, I will say there was a point in time where she became proactive in doing so. So prior to that, yeah, there's bits of information on the internet about her, and in fact, let me share some of that with you now. Yeah, I could see things like they'd been to a theme park, and I should point out my friend here lives in London. They'd also been to Manila, and I could see who she'd been to a certain bar with, which Indian restaurant in Birmingham she'd had dinner at. She'd taken a trip to Lancing College, a big prestigious college down near Lancing and Shoreham on the south coast of the UK, and stopped at a very, very nice little pub called Old Timbers Inn close by for lunch, and took a family holiday in France. So these are pieces of information prior to her protecting her location and privacy. Just gives you a feel for if you're not protecting your location and privacy, these are the types of pieces of information that potentially somebody can come and gather about you. And I will say I was not tagged as a friend on any of the social media accounts. So this is information I managed to glean from the public domain. I did this as an experiment of being an outsider. I also found out where she was born, and that she was a Miss GB contest participant, and that she was America's Top Model contest in one of those early 2000 years. So lots of rich information. But what was more shocking to my friend when she actually sat through the presentation of what I could find, and I should point out, I asked her before I did this whether she'd be up for this, and she sat around and said, well, you're not going to find anything about me because I've locked everything down and I'm now a pretty private person. But here is what else I found. Well, I found a picture of her daughter, which was somewhat shocking to her. But more importantly, I found out what music she liked, what her favourite actor was, who her favourite writer was, what drink she prefers, tea, she's obviously a Brit here, and what her favourite car was. I will tell you, she doesn't have a Bentley. That's an aspiration that she would like to own a Bentley. What her favourite board game was, and that she'd like to be taller, which is kind of somewhat disconcerting because she's already 6 feet if she's got heels on. So if she was too much taller, I think I'd feel a little intimidated. Because I'm 6'2", so people at the same height, great. People taller, but anyway, she's got no tattoos, and she's a Palace or Arsenal supporter. Let's hope she's an Arsenal supporter because that's my team too. Now, where did this information reside? Well, when I ran this experiment, I looked through common dating apps, and I looked through common places where you could find other information out about people. So sign up for free accounts, then start searching through other profiles, etc. And sure enough, I had a hit on Lucy and managed to glean all this information. So this was an online dating account that she had set up years beforehand. But of course, when setting up the account, she'd put in all her preferences, what she liked, etc. So that information was still out there. So there's the lesson to be learned here is, by the way, if you've got old accounts like that you don't use anymore, please go back, disable them. In fact, better still, delete them. So this information then doesn't reside out on the internet. And I think this was certainly a lesson for my friend. She, as I mentioned, lives in London. I could find out her daughter's name. I could find out pretty much who she worked for. So she's a scout for a modelling agency, that she speaks French. Now, the address In the UK, that's not so difficult sometimes, because if the person hasn't ticked the right boxes when they register to vote, then it's public information. I don't think everybody understands they should tick that box to keep the address anonymous, and I could find that same way her phone number. And once you have an address, you of course can look up from the regulator how much the property is valued at and when it was last sold. So lots of information. Now think about all the information that I've collected about my friend Lucy, and think about those questions that accounts ask me for security reasons. So where were you born? Where did you honeymoon? Or where did you... There's so many questions in here that I can start to answer because of the information and the snippets that she's left laying around on the internet. And this only spent maybe an hour or so looking for this information. An identity thief is going to have tools and scripts that will actually go off and collect this information for them and create a profile. So yeah, I was doing it as a manual task. So what type of phishing and scams that you might actually see somebody collecting identity through? So let's take a look at some of those. Well, phishing is not new. It dates back to the 1990s, around the AOL, email times, etc. And it's a cyber attack disguised as an email or a text message. And it's about the attacker impersonating a real company or somebody else for the purpose of collecting information. And it often is a combined attack. So you'll get an email, and the email will take you to a website where they're going to collect the information. So it's typically combined between the two, not just email. And the emails are often tracked. Now, I point this out because when you open an email, sometimes there's a slight pause and the signature will appear, or graphics, or a picture will appear. And that's being downloaded from the mail server. Now, if the mail has been constructed in a certain way, that information will be being pulled off the internet somewhere. And at the point where you pull it from a server, that server will grab your email address back because it knows who the requester is, and it will track who is actually pulling the image. And that's why companies do this and scammers do this, so they know that emails have been opened. But of course, you've then validated this is a real email address, so it's not just an email box that wasn't no longer used. You're validating it's active. So you're telling the cyber criminal that there's somebody on the other end of this email account. Now, what does a phishing email look like? Here's a good example. We often see these ones in our inboxes on a frequent basis. Certainly PayPal seems to be a big target here, or eBay, or certain other online services, unfortunately. And as you can see, your PayPal account has been blocked temporarily. Not uncommon to see an email of this type. And it's asking you from this email to take you off to a web page. As I state, that's usually a combined attack. But of course, if you hover over that PayPal reference at the top, you can see that the address that this has come from isn't from PayPal. So that's number one. You should actually look to see who the email is really from. Now, PayPal know my name, so they don't write me an email that says, "Dear email address." They actually say, "Dear Mr. Anscombe," or "Dear Tony," or whatever it is, and address me correctly. So there's an issue there. Now, this one's a little less obvious, but those of you that are grammar people, they're looking for grammar when you read text, you'll notice that the grammar is incorrect here. Very common mistake in phishing emails. They make grammar mistakes, or they make spelling mistakes. You would think they'd take the advice of their word processors, but for some reason they don't. And as you can see, this one's definitely incorrect. Even if you ignore the grammar, there's no spaces or anything like that. So this is clearly wrong. Then if you look at the web page it takes you to, there's other things in here that should point you to this as well. Now, it looks real because it says PayPal at the top, but it's not secure. Now, PayPal have digital certificates. This should be green. It should have a padlock because they will run HTTPS, which is the encryption between you and them when you actually send information across the internet. So look for look for that. Look for the green, or look for the padlock in there. And it's the wrong. If you notice very carefully here, it looks like PayPal at first glance, but it's Pay, P-A-I -US. So it's a domain near the PayPal name. They're actually trying to dupe you there slightly. So make sure you're actually reading it. And if in doubt, actually never open the email. Just go to the PayPal website. If they're after verification from you for something, it's going to ask you that when you log in. So just ignore these type of emails and these websites. Here's an example from an AT&T sign into Yahoo Mail. This is another phishing site here. You can see here the actual URL is nothing to do with AT&T. It's a spurious URL, so always look for that. And why would AT&T in Yahoo have a link to the Google privacy policy? So again, that's a scammer not actually reading what they're putting out. They've cut and paste something. So be cautious, always read the small print, so to speak. And then there's spear phishing, and unfortunately this is becoming more common because the more information you can find out about an individual, then you can actually customize that phishing attack. You can make it very, very personal. Let me give you an example of that. So this is an email I received through LinkedIn email system, and it comes from somebody I know, Alexander, who's head of corporate partnerships for a very prestigious charity in the UK. We've undertaken some projects before, and I'm going to come back to that. So his job title is correct. Yeah, that's the first thing. So it does actually look and feel like it's from Alexander. The time zone is correct because he's in the UK, I'm here. It's actually picking up the time I'm receiving the email as opposed to when he's sending it. So this is during his day. So the time zone on the email is correct. I have participated in previous projects. That's public knowledge because I think there were some press releases that went out with both our names on them. So somebody would know that. But what's actually wrong with this email? Firstly, hello. You'd say, hi, Tony. Yeah, we're friends. So actually there would be some more personal interaction. So there's number one in here that it's not personal enough. But look at this email. It actually looks pretty good and pretty real, doesn't it? And that's my point here is you've got to pick up on the really small things sometimes to pick up what's a phishing email. There's no reference to the type of product that we're talking about or project that we're talking about in here. We know each other. We know that when we talk, it's in confidence. So he would disclose some of the information around a project. And he wouldn't use a link. He'd actually detail details of the project in the email. Or we'd set up a call to have a discussion. So I know that's wrong too. Now, interestingly, and this is where the personal just isn't enough, it would be regards Alex. We know each other well enough. He's not Alexander, he's Alex. And whoever has scammed this, hasn't done the research on who he is and how he signs his emails. But you see how real this email is actually starting to look. Now, amusingly, I called Alex and told him that I think he'd had a hack in his LinkedIn account, and sure enough he had, and we laughed, and he went off and fixed it. Now, can you tell about whether something's real or not? This is another example. This is actually a bank. Now you can see which one do you think is real and which one do you think is fake, and I'll give you a moment to, in fact, let me keep talking and talk you through this. On the one on the left, you'll see there's a lovely advert there saying fraudsters call pretending to be the bank and other companies you trust. There's some protection information in there saying you need to stay safe online. And on the one on the right hand side, you can see it's offering you multiple ways actually of signing in. So by card number or by customer number. But you'll see these look fairly good. They look very, very similar. Now, for those astute amongst you that understand, if you do understand European law, you'll notice there's a cookie thing on the right-hand side one, which means the companies have to request to put cookies on your machine. There's little snippets of information that say, what language you prefer to look at the content in, etc. So that should be there. But we can see on the left-hand one, there's that message as well. Well, I can tell you now the one on the right is the real one. The one with the message warning about fraudsters is the fraud. But my point here is they look very, very real. So you've got to be switched on when you go to one of these websites. Don't forget about mobile. These things can happen on mobile too. In fact, there's less information typically displayed on mobile, so be really, really cautious when you're reading emails or going to websites on mobile. Don't think you're immune because you're not on a laptop. And of course, scammers will use SMS in much the same way they're using email. So you might get an SMS and wonder who it's from. Well, if it's not from somebody you know, or it's not from something you signed up for, just delete the SMS. Again, don't click on anything and just remove it. And sometimes you can see even within apps. So this is a Facebook verification. This is a Trojan within another app. It looks for whether you're a Facebook user. And when it sees you open Facebook, it then prompts you for this verification. So in effect, it takes over the screen. And why would Facebook be after your credit card details and such like to verify your identity? Who knows? So this is a scam. So just be aware that if something is out of context, then it's not real. Now, I mentioned taking control of your mobile phone here. This is a deadly one. SIM swapping. It's a fairly new thing. In the last, I would say, year, 18 months, it's become more prevalent. This is where a cyber criminal actually socially engineers the phone company to reissue the SIM card. Now, the SIM card is a little thing in your phone. It's a card that inserts in your phone, and it's got your phone number on it. So whoever's got, at the moment, the active SIM card is your phone number. So what they do is they socially engineer somebody in a phone carrier shop. Oh, I've lost my phone. Can you reissue the SIM? So they'll know your social security number, your address. They know pieces of information about you that we've already discussed. And they dupe the guy in the shop to turn around and say, I'm really in a stop. Somebody stole my wallet, so I don't have a driver's license. The story will go on. And they unfortunately may reissue the SIM card. Now, if they do reissue the SIM card, then somebody takes control of your phone. This is really deadly because your phone is used as the SMS authenticator for your bank accounts. You can reset. Typically, it's used to reset email passwords or passwords for accounts. Your phone is actually an authentication device these days. So if somebody can control your authentication device, there's a lot of damage they can actually do to you. So for example, with a SIM swap and certain pieces of information like social security number or who you bank with, somebody can walk into a branch and possibly get a reissue of your debit card or your ATM card. And the way they do that, they go to the desk, turn and say they've lost their wallet, they're traveling, can they reissue the ATM card? The bank will turn and send a verification code to the phone. The phone, of course, will receive it because the cyber criminal has got it now. He'll give the code to the person, the teller over the other side of the desk, and they'll reissue the card. And there we go. Your card got reissued and can now be used. And of course, with that, they'll probably reset the PIN and all sorts of other things. So be super cautious. Make sure that with your phone, a carrier, you've been in and you've set a password on your phone account. I can't stress that enough. So what happens to all this information? Well, the cyber criminals that steal it typically don't use it themselves. They sell it on the dark web. And let's take a quick look at that. So what is the dark web? Well, only 96% of the web, well, in fact, the other way around, only 4% of the web is the bit we see. 96% of it is kind of below the waterline. So think about that. There's the dark web at the bottom, which is a lot of illegal stuff. There are some legitimate reasons for the dark web as well, because if you're living in a country where you are not allowed to have a view or can't see the news, then the dark web may actually be your source there. But there's that big chunk in the middle, academic databases. Think about your bank account. When you sign into your bank account, that's all on the internet, but it's pages that are hidden behind your password. But that's the deep web. Yeah. So that's kind of where the dark web lives in relation to what the piece we see at the top, the Googles and the Yahoos that we use on a daily basis. Then, what happens on the dark web? That information, those emails or that data breach is sold. Yeah, so the cyber criminal that stole it will go on there and start selling that information. And as you can see here, 100,000 USA email addresses. No passwords, just emails. And they may be validated emails, i.e. they've opened an attachment or downloaded a graphics, they know they're active. So there's different levels of emails and depending on how much you want to spend. But in this instance, 100,000 validated US email addresses is $9. So there's money in this for cyber criminals that are involved in data breaches, especially when these data breaches are for hundreds of millions of accounts. What happens beyond that? I used the PayPal example earlier on, and phishing, so sticking with that. This is a site the PayPal sent on the dark web, and they sell PayPal accounts. Yeah, so kind of a little bit scary there. So let's look at some of those accounts. You can see accounts, how much there's in the accounts, the balance of the account, where the account is held, and the price that you're going to pay the cyber criminal who stole the details. So they're not actually committing the fraud themselves. They're selling the fraud onto somebody else to go and commit the real fraud against you. Of course, all of it's real fraud, but you know what I mean. It's the actual transaction against you. Now, interestingly enough, if they sell you something that doesn't work, yeah, you can contact them. There's a complete service section, and they'll actually replace the account with another account. Yeah, so honesty is somewhat amongst thieves on the dark web. Not just PayPal accounts, credit cards too. You can buy packages of credit card numbers and the security codes, the CVC number, and you can get those into your email box. And yeah, they're refreshed every few days. So this is very current data, because of course somebody may actually be blocking their card. So how do we protect our identity? Well, first thing is strong passwords and passphrases, two-factor authentication. Let's lump these two together. Yeah, don't use the same password on multiple sites, and think about the asset that you're protecting. If you're protecting your bank account, you need a super complex password. Now, the way I do this is I have phrases in my head. So, for example, I'm an Arsenal supporter, as already mentioned. Yeah, Arsenal Football Club, so AFC 2 ! Manchester City Football Club, so MCFC, lowercase, yeah, #0. So it may be a game I've attended, but it's something I'm easily going to remember, and it's just a set of random numbers and letters to anybody else. But of course, it means something to me, and there's no real words for somebody to brute force either. So it's very hard to guess. Two-factor authentication. I already talked about this with the SIM swap. If you're, wherever possible, on every account you can possibly do this on, switch on two-factor authentication so that you're using your phone as a secondary authenticator. So it's not just relying on your user ID and password, it's then sending you something to another device and you're giving that data to it as well before you log in. That's the one big thing that can help you protect your identity online and having a scammer getting into your accounts. Don't carry social security numbers, don't store them in your phone, and don't have PIN numbers written down or stored in the same way. Shred everything personal. That stops that guy dumpster diving. However, I'd like to catch somebody in my bin dumpster diving. I think it would be hilarious. But make sure you shred everything. Everything that's got your name and address on it. Everything, even if it's a charity or mailer or whatever, just shred it. If it's got your name and address on it, it's better actually in pieces, not in the bin for somebody else to read. And when asked for your details by companies, always question why they need it. They're asking for details that you don't think is relevant to the service they're providing. Then ask them what they're going to do with the details and and how it's going to be stored. Yeah, monitor your accounts, bank accounts, etc. Make sure you're not being scammed or targeted anyway. Enable mail tracking. So I don't know whether you use this service, but with USPS, every morning I get an email from them that shows the mail I'm going to expect to see in my mailbox that day. A really cool system, and it tells me what parcels might be delivered that day as well. Because I know what pieces of mail are going to be in the mailbox, if somebody actually takes one, I know that something's missing from my mailbox instantly. And I can identify most of the time what those letters are. You know what a bank letter or a statement looks like, or certain companies send things in certain envelopes in certain ways. So you can actually pretty much identify from the envelope what's in the envelope. So turn that on. That's actually a pretty good thing to turn on. Protect your phone number. As I already said, go into your carrier, set the extra security protocols around your phone number. If you've never set them, they're not set, and somebody could actually abuse that. So make sure you go and actively do this. Question phone callers. Unfortunately, there's lots of scammers that will ring you up as well. Don't stay on the phone with them. Most important. If you think they're a scammer, just hang up, be gone, and put on the robocalling thing as well, so you're not being bugged on your phone that way either. But get rid of those scammers. If Microsoft do not phone up people and tell them they need to update their machine, that's a scammer. The IRS don't call you and tell you you've got an issue with your social security number. That's a scammer. They will write to you. Make sure you have antivirus protection. Can't state this enough, because that's going to help you from a technology standpoint about protecting against phishing, protecting against bad links, and protecting against malware. And I'm going to mention that again in just a moment, just to drive the point home. Limit where you share data. Not everybody in the world needs to see what you had for dinner last night, or where you're going, or where you went today. So limit and share only with friends. Low credit limit on a card that you use online. Never use your debit card online, and don't transact over public Wi-Fi. All good tips in here, and again, antivirus protection is on this slide as well. But when I say don't transact over public Wi-Fi, it's actually got the right name. It's public Wi-Fi. Yeah, so don't do some things over public networks. Wait till you get home or use your mobile device if needed. Now, this is a big one. Freeze your credit account. Yeah, freeze your credit file. And I say this because if you freeze it, then nobody else can access it. So if somebody tries to get a credit card in your name, they can't, and it restricts access. And you can unfreeze and freeze. So if you're then in somewhere, you want to get a store card, or you want to get more credit, or you need to unlock your credit file, you can unlock it, let them access it, yeah, and then you can relock it. So it stops somebody opening accounts. And you can do this for kids, grandchildren as well. So you can actually create their credit file for them, and it stops anybody else doing this. Yeah, this is one of the biggest things I actually think you can do to stop financial fraud against you. However, please bear in mind, it doesn't affect existing accounts. It only stops them doing for new accounts. There is legislation coming. I talked about data breaches, so just quickly, we're all here in California. There is privacy legislation or actually enforced now. The CCPA Act protects our data. It states how companies need to protect our data encrypted. There needs to be authentication. And it states big fines, and it doesn't look like that way from the numbers on the screen, but if per incident per victim, if that's 40,000 or 50,000 Californian residents are part of a data breach, that soon mounts up. That becomes a big number, and a company's going to have to pay. So there's a motivation for companies to protect our information in the right way. And you've got similar legislation in Europe under GDPR as well. And just to end, if something does happen to you, don't feel stupid. I was attacked as part of a British Airways data breach about a year and a half ago. Cyber criminals took my credit card data, and they took out $7,500 worth of insurance policies. They cashed them into another account, so they were laundering money through knowing my credit card data. There's nothing I could have done about this. I used the right card online, and it was unfortunately breached, and they took advantage of that. So just be aware. Make sure that you're doing everything you possibly can, but don't feel silly if something does happen. Don't feel embarrassed about it. It may not actually have been within your control. And if you are a victim, here's how to get help: identitytheft.gov. Report the crime to the FTC. The more crimes they get reported, the more focused this gets by legislators and by law enforcement. And more to the point, they'll help you with a recovery plan and help you through the process of regaining your identity, or what to do if one of your accounts has actually been abused. So thank you for attending this webinar. It's been great to talk to you about this. As I said, ESET's a cybersecurity company. We have an offer for you today where you can get discounted consumer software from us. So there's the address up there, offers.eset.com/oasis. And if you've got any questions, I'm free to take them now. I'm looking forward to having that conversation with you. So that was great, and I see we've got some questions already coming in. Somebody's asked why not to use a debit card for online purchases. That's a great question, and the reason being is if you have a credit card, your credit card has a limit on it, a credit limit on it. Now you can get a credit card just for online purchases from your bank, and turn and say, okay, I'm going to create a limit of maybe $500 or $1,000 or wherever you want that limit to be. And that way, if a scammer does actually use your card, or your card becomes breached and starts using it, what you can actually do is limit the risk. And while the banks cover the risk anyway, it stops some of the stress from your side. If you use your debit card, that means they've got direct access to your bank account. Now, if you've got a bank account and a savings account that are linked, of course, when the bank account empties, then the bank may actually have one of those systems where they take money directly from the savings account so you don't go overdrawn. And hasten to add, you've got much bigger problems. They're taking your actual cash. So don't use a debit card. One of the other questions I've got in here is, what is best way to get rid of unwanted emails? Is it okay to hit unsubscribe? Right. Now let's put emails into two camps. One of those camps there is that emails that you did subscribe for. So, if you're on Target's email list and they keep sending you too many emails, then yeah, click unsubscribe. However, if you never subscribed to an email and you're getting junk, then it's likely to be phishing. Yeah, so don't click unsubscribe. In fact, just delete the email, because there'll be certain tracking in the email as well. So if you open the email, the scammer will know you're a live email account. So that's not a good thing either. Yeah, so make sure you get rid of those. So I'm just reading some of the other questions that are coming up here. How do people get a hold of your credit card number? Well, unfortunately, that's far too easy. Let's use me as the example. In fact, I mentioned being part of that British Airways scam. In that instance, a cyber criminal had put a little piece of code on British Airways website, which is why actually British Airways got fined by the regulator in the UK, £20 million, so about $25 million for not having the right security. But this little piece of code copied all the credit card transactions to their database. Another way is through data breaches. So if a cyber criminal attacks a company, manages to get hold of their data, then credit card numbers are often included in amongst that data. So it's kind of just unfortunate that your credit card number is not always secure. I don't know whether you've ever had it. I've once a few years ago, the bank was actually my bank was proactive. I think they scour the dark web, some of the banks, and they look for numbers that they own, i.e. your credit card number, because it's also a risk for them. And they actually sent me a new card proactively and told me to destroy the last one. So your bank might be on top of this too. So how does one protect their phone number? That's a very good question. Contact your carrier. So contact, whether it's Verizon, T-Mobile, or AT&T, or whoever it is, whoever you get your cellular mobile from, make sure on the account they have a password set up, and that password can be a PIN number, or it could be a word, or it could be a set of secret questions, or whatever system they have. But historically, they never set up the security on the accounts. So if you had an account that's 5-10 years old, you may not actually have the PIN number set. And that is unfortunately what is being socially engineered across the counter or on the phone to get the reissue of the SIM. So make sure you've actually set the security. So contact your carrier. You can do that by either going in the shop, giving them a call, or use their web chat service if you go online. Myself, I always prefer to use the web chat service, because you can do something else while you're sitting there waiting, and being on hold on a phone and listening to those messages always, it's not good for my stress level. Somebody's asked the question, is a free antivirus program okay to use? Well, if you've got nothing else, yes. However, I'd recommend you pay for one. And the reason being is diversity in security is a good thing. So if too many people use one singular product, you end up with lower rates of protection. It's a bit like crop rotation that farmers use. So there's that issue, but also free can often have other reasons to be free. So are they collecting your data? Are they going to continually try and sell you something else? Personally, I'd make the investment, purchase something. I'm not going to get bothered by lots of other advertisements, and I know I've got protection to a certain time and date. The most important thing though is if you don't have the money to purchase antivirus software, a free one is the minimum. So I'm sorry, I'm reading the questions here as fast as I can. How do you freeze your credit account? Call each credit card company. Actually, no, you call the credit agents. You call the credit agency, and the credit agencies have links between them. So if you subscribe to, not subscribe. So if you go on and create a free account at, for example, Experian or TransUnion, so one of the credit agencies that were on my slide, and you put an alert on the account, they will actually notify the other credit agencies that there's a fraud alert on your account. Then you can freeze the account. Now, if you do freeze it, you need to freeze, unfortunately, all of them, because it will only freeze the one that you're on. But if you freeze a large credit agency, when somebody's doing a credit check, they typically do a credit check on multiple companies. So they'll see that there's a frozen account. But if you put a fraud alert, they notify each other. So each one sees the same thing. And it means that you will go through that extra step of validating the person at the counter that's trying to get credit. So I'd recommend doing that. And do that for if you've got kids, yeah, also create the credit files for your kids, because unfortunately you don't want a scammer to be creating the credit file for your kids. So also do it for them too. So kind of start their life in a good position. Let me go down the list here. So in spite of your accident, for the US people, I'm thinking UK and EU may be different. I assume by my accident, you mean by British Airways taking my credit card data. No, unfortunately, that's a global issue. The regulator imposing a big fine on British Airways is very much a UK or EU issue. But the actual scam itself, which is what I was trying to say, is, look, I'm a cybersecurity professional, and actually somebody breached one of my credit cards, which is why I shared the story. Don't feel silly. Don't feel that you did something wrong, because in that instance, it was a piece of code on British Airways website, and there's nothing I could have done about it. Much the same scams. How do I protect the phone number? I think I've covered that one. How do I enable mail tracking? So if you go to USPS, there's a system where you can be notified that they have parcels for you. And in amongst where you notify, you get the option to, once you've created the account, you get the option, you can change delivery instructions, etc. In amongst there is a tick box that you can turn and say, tell me what mail is coming to me each day. The downside, I will say, is my wife hates me having this ability, because it means there's no surprise, especially at Christmas. I know all the packages that are going to turn up. She says I'm like Big Brother. But like I say, it means I know exactly what's in the mailbox every day. And if it's not in the mailbox, I know that somebody's taken it. So it's an important part of understanding if somebody's got fraud in there. Somebody's asked, what's the best way to delete a PayPal account? That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that question. I'm going to take that away as an action and find out whether you can delete a PayPal account. I assume they're regulated because it's a financial account, that they have to hold certain details, but I assume you can close the account. Whether you can delete it, I don't know. I will take that away as an action and come back to everybody if that's possible. Do you need to purchase antivirus software if you have a Mac? Absolutely, yes. Phishing scams that are in browsers work on any browser, regardless of whether you're on a Mac or a PC. So protection against those type of scams, and you can get viruses on a Mac. In fact, I'm sitting here with a Mac now, so we're communicating on a Mac, and I can tell you now I have ESET's Cybersecurity Pro product loaded on my Mac to make sure that I don't become a victim. It is more prevalent on Windows, I will say that. There is more malware out there for Windows, but it's also more targeted on a Mac and can become more dangerous. Passwords. You mentioned remembering and gave an example. Can't possibly recall all. Where do you store passwords? In my head. But I remember them. I'll give you that example again. Actually, I remember them as passphrases, not as passwords. So, Arsenal Football Club, AFC2, ! Manchester City Football Club, MCFC 0, hash, and some of that lowercase, some of that uppercase. So maybe the Arsenal in an uppercase because that's the team I support. Yeah, there I've got AFC2, MCFC. So no real words in there, and I can remember that because actually it's a game that I went to, so therefore I've got it in my head. But if in doubt, use a password manager. Yeah, and thank you. Somebody's just said USPS service is called Informed Delivery. So thank you for that. Thank you for helping me out. But I tell you now, it is a great service. I'm just looking down to see if there's any other questions. We've got a minute and 30 seconds left. Should you unsubscribe if you recite? I think we've answered that one on whether the email was real or not. I can't see any more questions. I don't think will a recording be available? I believe so. And a SIM card. Let's quickly answer that one. What is a SIM card? So somewhere in your phone is a little card. You know the chip on your credit card? It's basically the chip piece. It's got your phone number on it, and it's what the carrier uses to give you service. So that's what the SIM card is. And typically there's a little, like a pinhole on your phone somewhere, or you take the back off to get to the SIM card. So it's kind of like your identity on a very small card in the phone. That's how you can move from phone to phone. And very quickly, two-factor authentication. There's a blog on that, and I will ask the team to send out a copy of my blog on two-factor authentication. So thank you for listening. Been a pleasure today. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. This is Eleanor, your exercise instructor. I know you've been enjoying the wonderful presentations at this tech fair. Let's get ready for some others by stretching a little bit. Take your legs out in front of you. Point and flex the ankles. Point and... Now circle them. Breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. In and out, and in and out. Come to the edge of the chair, pick up one knee and hug it. If you can, take an ankle across the other knee to stretch the outer hip. Breathe. 2, 3, other side. Now stand up. Take a big breath in, and as you breathe out, put a foot up on the chair. Inhale and exhale as you sit down into the leg that's on the floor. The toe is pointing up. You want to feel a stretch in the hamstrings. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Now, round your back and take it up. 2, 3. Now link your fingers together in back and pull down on the shoulders and up on the chest, chin up to the ceiling. 1, 2, 3. Now, let's do something for the hands and the fingers. I know you've been taking lots of notes. So link your fingers together and let's just exercise them a little bit. Pretend you're flicking water at somebody. Now, arms out to the side, take an arm across. 2, 2, 3. Now, as you step to the side, feel a stretch in the inner thigh. Feel a stretch in the inner thigh. Now make some faces. Exercise those muscles in your face. Roll the eyes a little bit and shake it out. Now you're ready for the next session.
know when you're making eggs and the flames make them perfectly sunny side up? Or you pull those warm clothes from the dryer ready to wear? Or on a cold night when you snuggle into your warm house? That's thanks to a buried gas line into your home. So if you dig around without knowing what's underground, you could be calling 911. Find out what's below before you dig. Contact 811 at least 2 working days before you dig so utilities can mark the location of their buried lines.
Welcome to San Diego Oasis, where we engage adults 50 and over in the practice of successful aging. We learn new skills, get fit, and most importantly, have a wonderful time. Take a class in history, technology, finance, learn a new language or a new dance step. Do something for your mind, your body, and your community. Visit us at SanDiegoOasis.org today.
Today I'm going to be talking about online dating and social apps. We're going to focus more on the online dating and actually some of the nasty scams that are out there around romance scams and other things, and hopefully give you some good advice on potentially how to stay safe if you are going down the online dating route or try to meet new friends through social apps. So this is me. I'm Tony Anscombe, as you just heard, Chief Security Evangelist at ESET. ESET's a cybersecurity company. Brent gave you a great introduction to us as a company. If you have a question at the end of the presentation, great. I mean, we're going to have some questions and answers, so I look forward to that. However, if you've got a question that you don't want to ask in a public forum, or in a month's time you decide you've got a question that you'd love somebody to answer, an expert in the system, please feel free to reach out to me. Here's my email address. I will do my best to get back to you. It might take me a day or so sometimes, but I will promise to email you back. And there's my Twitter address as well. So at Tony@ESET. So don't feel embarrassed about any questions you might ask. There's never such a thing as a stupid question, because actually if you don't know something, it's good to ask. So tony.anscombe@eset.com. So feel free to email me at any time. So what's the problem? Why is there a problem with online dating, or why should we be concerned? Why does somebody like me need to stand up in front of you and say we need to keep you safe if you are going down this path? Well, firstly, there is a problem. So the Federal Trade Commission collect information on scams and crime. So this is in a report by a unit called IC3, which is part of the FTC. In fact, this is part of the FBI, that the FTC report on. So people reporting crime. It's people reporting losing more money in romance scams in the past 2 years than any other fraud reported. So that's a huge statement. So romance scams are growing. It's an issue. And it's got the notice of people like the FTC who are trying to protect you. Now, how many romance scams were reported? Well, there's 25,000 in 2019. That's a 40% increase on 2018. And the scams involved around $201 million. So that's the reported crime. Now, think about this type of crime. This is a romance scam. So, you've been suckered in, for want of a better term, by some cyber criminal. They've told you they love you, and you've gone down this path and you've handed over some cash, or you feel that you've been scammed in some way, and you go to the FTC and report it, hopefully. But I actually reckon there's an awful lot of people that don't. They probably feel really embarrassed. They probably feel really awkward about what's happened, and actually they probably just want to lift the rug and sweep it under the rug and have another day and not go down the path of reporting it. So just bear in mind, these are the people that reported it. This number is probably much, much, much higher in real terms, because a lot of people probably just don't report it because they feel embarrassed about being a victim of a crime like this. Now, if we look at cybercrime generally, by the way, across the globe, across all types of different cyber criminals, whether it's ransomware, whether it's phishing, whether it's data breaches and identity theft, the value of cybercrime is worth about $1.5 trillion today globally. So this is a business, and this is really important to understand as we go through this presentation. Just have in the back of your mind that anybody that might scam you, anybody that might try to harm you online, this is their job. This is how they're making money. There's a lot of money at stake in here, and it's a business for them. It's not, and that is how they make their living. And that's an unfortunate scenario. So they're motivated to do this. So what is a romance scam? Let's look at that first. So a romance scam is where somebody creates a fake profile. They pretend to be somebody they're not. And that fake profile they then use to target victims. So whether that's in social media, whether that's on dating sites, or whether it's in other social apps, they create a persona and they then target people. Now, they may target that person with some level of knowledge, i.e. some of that person's details may have been in a data breach. So they may know something already about that person, maybe something they like or something they've got interest in. So they target their victims very specifically. They may look for certain demographics. So is this person likely to pay if I try and scam them? So they do actually profile the person they're trying to attack. They will build trust with the person. And that trust, they will try and build it really, really quickly. And they may even get to the point of telling the person, they love them very, very quickly in a relationship, maybe too soon. However, of course, as the victim, it might be something you wish to hear at that moment in time, not realizing they're not legitimate. They will chat several times a day. Now, this might seem frequent, so you might actually feel pretty good about this person wanting to chat with you several times a day. But remember, they're chatting with maybe 50 other people that day. Yeah, they're not just running one online scam against you. They're actually running lots of online scams against lots of people at the same time, all with different personas, and they're just moving from one to the next. So they may actually feel frequent, but they're not. Unfortunately, this is their job. They're sitting at a desk somewhere actually doing this. They'll have a creative story. Now, what I mean by that is they'll have a story that makes them an oil rig worker, or they'll be in the military, or they're going to be a doctor overseas. But there will be some elaborate story, meaning that they're abroad. They don't live in the area. Maybe they will tell you they did live in the area, but they will give you some elaborate story about their career or where they are, their location, and that is all part of the scam. And then they'll ask you for money, and that elaborate story then plays into the money role as well. So they may turn around and say, well, I'd like to come and see you. Could you fund this? Could you send me money for a plane ticket? So there, we're linking the two together. They want travel expenses. They may turn around and claim they've got surgery costs because they need to go and see a doctor, or they've got gambling debts they need to pay off, or they've got visa and documents that they're stuck in some country that they can't get out of, or they need to get home and they can't for some reason, or they need a new passport. Can you wire them money? This is all just a scam. Anybody on an online dating site that's asking you for money, it's a scam. So start from that zero trust of everybody point of view, and it will help start to keep you safe. They'll ask you to wire money. They'll ask for it through gift cards. They'll ask you to reload a card that they've already got. They'll give you the details of that card to see if you'll reload it. And like I say, they will profess love for you very, very quickly. And the one thing they will try and do is take the conversation off of the dating sites. They'll try and get you onto another platform, a chat platform, an individual platform, where actually the communication may not be being logged by any company, where dating sites may actually keep records of some of those communications going backwards and forwards, so that if law enforcement comes knocking and says at some stage that actually they want to, there has been a scam, if they've taken you off the site and the communication is off the site, that's why, because it's much harder for law enforcement to actually come and get that detail. So what about staying safe? So that's kind of the negative side. Let's talk about actually doing this in a really positive way. And how do we keep you safe online? So let's give you some of those tips about some of the things that I'd suggest you do both during and before you sign up to any online dating site. One of the first things I'd say is know what's online about you, because if you do use your own identity, which I don't personally recommend, but if you did, or you do end up telling somebody what your real name is, make sure you know what's online about you already. So Google yourself. Here's a Google of me. So as you can see, I'm pretty much in. I've got a fairly unique-ish name. So you can see my search results don't get lots of other people in here as well. But if you've got a name that's more frequently used or more commonly used, put a location in here and you'd actually narrow down these results, or put some other information in here about you that would narrow down these results, and you'll soon find out if there's anything about you. And easily skipping through the first 2 or 3 pages, you'll find out if there's information on the internet about you. As you can see on here that different articles about me, different blog sites that I'm on, etc. They're all pretty much in here. Now, also look at images. So as you can see, lovely images of me. Some of them from slightly when I was younger. And there's 2 images in there, as you can see, that clearly aren't me. I didn't have the long hair or look like that at any stage. But however, that is amusingly another Tony Anscombe, who's a Brit, and he lived in Los Angeles. So 2 Brits living in California with the same name. Very strange, but there you go. He unfortunately has passed away. He was a film director and film producer. So I used to see my name when I was a kid appearing on the credits, which was always very exciting if we went to see a movie that he produced or directed. So how do you know when somebody has added something to the internet about you? Well, once you've done that search, you're happy you know what's out there about you, set up a Google alert. Now, if you type in Google Alerts in Google, it will come up with this box on the screen here on the left-hand side, and you'll see that I have alerts for me, my wife, and my son. What that means is I get the email that's on the right-hand side of this screen once a day. You can choose to actually have it in pretty much real time, or you can choose for it to be weekly, I think. But once a day, I get an email that's, if anything new has appeared about me, I get an email saying what's appeared. So as you can see here, an article had been published that day where I've been quoted talking about COVID-19 contact tracing apps. So anytime anything appears about me on the internet, I am aware of it. So if somebody else posts something about me, I get to see that too. So it's super, super useful. So then you know what's out there on the internet about you. Whatever device you're using, so if you are thinking of doing online dating, if you're using a tablet or a phone, of course, some of those applications, or even if you're using a laptop and caching passwords in the browser, then make sure that you think about who else might have access to the device or who else might be using the device. If you're one of those people that take a tablet and hand it off to kids and they start playing games on apps and all sorts of things, just make sure that they're not being able to access whatever else it was you were doing on the device as well. So if you did have an online dating app, then you don't want them going in there and seeing maybe the conversations you were having with somebody you've just met, or potentially that what your preference is or how you've listed yourself, etc., etc. So just make sure you're conscious of who you're sharing the device with. So there's so many of these sites, and there are a lot of online dating and social sites. So some of them are free, some of them are paid. If it's free, you're probably the way they're making money. So your data may actually be the cost of the site. They may be using data about you and selling it to someone else, or using it for advertising purposes, or If it's free, the company makes money somehow. So I'm trying to understand how that company makes money. There's a certain rule of nothing. There's no such thing as a free lunch, and that's unfortunately true as well on the internet. Somehow we pay for all the services we use. Think about that. When we were looking at Google just a minute ago, Google search results typically have those sponsored ads at the top. So you're using Google for free, but you're paying. The ads are what's paying for you using it. Same on a dating site. Just be conscious if it's free. Read the privacy policy. Now, this might sound really, really boring and geeky, but if you take a scan of the privacy policy, you don't need to read all the legalese and C's. Look at the pieces of the privacy policy that talk about, what data we collect, what we do with your data, who we share your data with. It's probably 3 different sections of the privacy policy. Understand what's happening to your data, because you're going to potentially put in some personal information, something you might not want to share with somebody else. Is there a trial period? If there is, use it. Make sure because then at the end of the trial period, if you've decided it's not for you, you can obviously delete the account and move on. And in fact, that's a good point. Make sure you can delete the account. Make sure you do some research on the site before you sign up. Some of these sites, some of the less reputable ones, don't actually allow you to delete the account, or you'll have to email them, and then you're going to go through this process of being frustrated that they don't respond to you. Make sure that you can actually delete the account. Now, under privacy legislation in certain territories, so for example, we're in California, European sites, different places around the world, there is privacy legislation that means they have to delete you if you've asked. But if the site is in another country, hosted in another country, doesn't comply or whatever, for whatever reason, that might be difficult. So make sure there's a delete option. And if, of course, somebody's recommended it, awesome, because recommendations are what works best. Before you spend any money, think about how you're going to spend the money. If in doubt, use a prepaid card. So if you're not sure about whether this is something you want to go into long term, and it's forcing you to put a credit card in for repeat payments, use a prepaid credit card. Go to the supermarket, buy one off the shelf, put that certain amount on the card, and use that card number to actually subscribe to the site for a month. If possible, don't store credit card details on the site. In fact, that's actually a pretty good tip on all websites. Unless it's something absolutely you're going to use time and time again, just don't store card details. You can use card details on demand as and when required. Be aware that once you've signed up to a social network like this, that somebody else may be seeing you. If you have used your real name, you might start to see emails saying, oh, we need new payment details off you, because of course they know which site you're on. They know you've just signed up. And suddenly, if they can find out your email address, then you might see phishing emails or scammy emails claiming to be from that site. So be super careful of that. Phishing emails are becoming really, really complex and very, very legitimate looking. So they are becoming harder and harder to recognize, unfortunately, because there's more technology becoming available to the bad guys, unfortunately. Use a good password. Every cybersecurity person that stands up in front of an audience says, strong passwords, strong passwords. Absolutely, use a strong password. And there's an example on this screen here, AFC3, MCFC0. So if you can't remember a complex password such as that, make it a phrase of something you know. This says Arsenal Football Club 3, Manchester City Football Club 0. So I actually went to a game where those two clubs played. I'm an Arsenal fan. Delighted. So in big capital letters, Arsenal Football Club is 3 and Manchester City Football Club is 0. There's no real words in there. Very hard to guess. You can mix the case. And you can create passwords out of those types of phrases, different scores or different things in life. You can create very complex passwords if you create phrases that you remember in your head. Now, if you can't remember passwords, use a password manager. That's another option. Now, the other thing on here, the second point on this slide, switch on multi-factor authentication. Now, what do I mean by that? When you sign onto a site and it sends a code to your mobile phone, you've got to put in the number to log on to the site. That's multi-factor authentication. And it's called that because it's something you have and something you know. So you're logging onto the site, you've got to physically have the phone because it's sending it to that phone number, and you've got to know the PIN to get into the phone, and you've also got to put in the password to get into their service. So something you have, something you know. The best way to think of this, if it all sounds way too complicated, it's not, because we've all been carrying one in our pocket for the last 20 years or so. It's called an ATM card. The banks use it. Something you have and something you know. It's the card you have and the PIN number, of course, to get cash out of that hole in the wall. That's if you've got cash. But my point is don't be afraid to turn that on. It's one of the things that will save your account from being breached or cyber attackers getting access to it. It's probably the biggest thing you can do today to actually secure your account. So make sure you use it if it's an option. Personally, I'd say don't use your real name. You can be whoever you want. Don't be too fake. Don't use somebody else's identity, but you don't need to use your real name. Set up an email account specifically just for this purpose. So go and create a new email account just for this purpose, because if you decide it's just not for you and you want to put it to bed, you can. And more to the point, if you do get scammed in that unfortunate scenario, you can just delete the account and move on. So don't use your Facebook or Google ID. So don't link these things together, because of course, once you do, it's fairly easy to trace somebody from one service to another service if they're using the same ID across multiple services, or indeed the same email address across different services. So try and actually keep this completely separate. Don't overshare and be honest. That goes without saying. I should really, when I say but be honest, of course, I've just told you not to use your real name. So I'm saying be honest in most parts. But don't disclose your true identity. See, your profile doesn't need to be a full life story, and consider not using your full location. So you could say, I'm in the San Diego area, and that's probably enough. You don't need to get into which suburb or where in the San Diego area you actually are. And a picture should be recognizable. I put this in here because there's so many stories you hear of, it wasn't quite the person. They posted a picture of 20 years ago. Be honest. When I say be honest, that's the type of thing I mean be honest about. You are who you are, and be proud of who you are. So use a recent picture. And oversharing, if you put too much in your profile, by the way, and maybe you're not being scammed on that site, but all the information on there might be being scraped by some bad guy that's on the site too, who's building profiles of people that they're going to scam in some other way. So don't overshare, because those are pieces of your identity puzzle that could be used in other ways. And my next presentation is about identity theft. So if you're going to hang around for that, we're going to talk about that in a bit more detail. In fact, I'm going to explain to you how somebody scammed me, which was really bad. But you'll learn about that in the next presentation. Now, on the picture front, think about what pictures to share. I shouldn't need to explain this, but don't share pictures of your junk, and don't share pictures of naked breasts. Yeah, because what happens on the internet, unfortunately, stays on the internet. So we'll move on from that. We don't need to dwell on that, but just be cautious of what you do share. And think about what's in the pictures you share. So there is hidden information in pictures that you share as well. So for example here, this is a picture taken of me at an event presenting. It was taken by an ESET colleague. I actually asked him to take pictures because I always like to have a picture of where I've presented, and typically a few of the audience in there as well, because it helps me internally to turn and say, yeah, there was lots of people turned up for the talk. It was always interesting. So it helps me internally to show that I'm doing a good job. Now, what do I mean by other data sitting in the back of the picture? Well, so you can see the picture, and on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see the metadata that is stored with the picture. Now, this isn't just phones. DSLR cameras do this too. They store things like the lens used and the exposure, etc. But if you look at this, you can see which phone this was taken from, the make of the phone. You can see which lens the phone was using, and the flash didn't go off, but most importantly are those details on the bottom of this picture, the GPS coordinates. So every phone has a GPS system in it, so it knows exactly where it is. Of course, that's how we use Google Maps and all those sorts of great things that we use on our phones, and super convenient they are too, aren't they? But when you're taking a picture, if somebody hasn't actually switched off the location with the camera, it means that you can locate it. So now think about this in our online dating scenario. Somebody says, oh, can you send me a picture? You take the selfie, you send them a picture. Guess what? You may have just advertised exactly where you live, because if they're smart and they're switched on, they can actually look and suddenly see the exact location. So as you can see, I was actually in the Hyatt Regency in Toronto, and that little orange square, and that is exactly where I was in the actual hotel. So I was actually on that corner of the building. So the GPS is actually pretty accurate. So if you're in a street with houses or even in an apartment complex, somebody can probably pinpoint you to within a few meters. So switch it off. This is how you switch it off. This is an iPhone. This is my iPhone. So if you go into privacy, look at location. If you go down to camera, click on camera, you can see you can actually just switch off location access. Yeah. To me, I never need to send somebody my location in a picture. There's no need for them to ever see that or have that metadata. If you did have a picture that you needed that metadata to be in it, then great, come back in, switch it on, take the picture, and then switch it off. Yeah, but just don't actually do it all the time. So yeah, just keep it switched off. Yeah. Now, while we're on the subject of pictures, there is a super cool service that very few people understand or know about. You can reverse lookup. You can reverse image scan and search for images of pictures on Google. So we think about searching for a name and then looking at images, or searching for a recipe, and then you see images of somebody that's cooked the recipe or whatever, or what the recipe might look like. You can actually upload an image and scan Google for it. So let's look at what that is. So here's the URL, super useful URL, and it's a super fun thing to go and do anyway, actually. Go to Google Images. Yeah, click on this little button here, this camera button, and when you do, this box will appear, and you can paste in the URL of where the image is. So if you know the link, if it's an online image, Google will go collect the image and search for that image, or you can upload the image. So what I did was I clicked on upload an image, and I used an image. In fact, the profile picture at the start of my presentation, I used that image. So that little circular image, which is an image that I use frequently when I post blogs, etc. And I searched the internet, I gave it to Google and said, can you tell me all the places where this image is? And the search results look something like this. So as you can see, the image is at the top, RSA 2018. That was actually the image I uploaded. For some reason, it then gives you words associated with the listings of where you are. For some reason, it thinks I'm a gentleman. I'd like to think of myself as a gentleman. So Google got that right. And as you can see, the search results, We Live Security, where I write blogs, the RSA conference at the bottom, which is actually where the picture was originally uploaded. If I go to page 2, I see other articles that I've written. I'll come across that Tech Republic article that you saw earlier on about COVID apps. You'll see pictures that wherever that picture was used. Now, why is this important when you're online dating? Well, think about this. If somebody is scamming you, they're using a fake picture, or a generic picture that they may be using on 10 other profiles too, if you scan, you might see suddenly in here, this picture appear with 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different names against it. So suddenly you know it's not real. So you know that the person's picture is fake or being used in multiple profiles, if I can get my words out. Sorry about that. Yeah, so great tool to do that. Don't move away from the site you're on. Yeah, stay on the site. The person will be trying to get you off to those other sites. I think we already mentioned that. Yeah, so remember what you share can be reposted, even if you're using a site, even if you have moved the communication to a site that says, videos disappear every 24 hours or conversations are deleted automatically. Just bear in mind, somebody can screenshot, somebody can take a picture of a picture, so 2 phones, and actually take a picture from one phone to the next phone. There's all sorts of ways that people can keep content. Even if it's a video call, somebody may actually be capturing the entire video call and recording it on their machine. So just be aware, anything you do online, doesn't forget, it doesn't go away. Somebody may have captured it. So whatever you do, make sure you're happy that whatever you're doing potentially goes into the public domain. And also, think about everything before you send. Before you hit post or hit send on something, think for 5 seconds. Is this what I want to be doing? Is it what I want to be saying? Is it what I want to be sharing? So just think and pause before you always hit send. Do your research on the person. Yeah. Much the same I've talked about, doing a Google search on you and doing image lookups and all those sorts of things. Do your research on that person too. Of course, if they're using not their real name and being safe like you are, you might not actually find too much. So don't be too shocked by that. But if they are scamming you, you're likely to find that their identity or certainly the picture has appeared in other places too. Don't use your real phone number. Use a Google Voice number. It's a burner. It creates a burner phone virtually online, or indeed use a burner phone. Type in Google Voice. You can get a phone number that's attached to your local geographic area, so it will be the same area code, San Diego area code. So it looks and feels all very legitimate. You can get messages to it. You can take voice calls. You can speak to people on it. You can respond to text messages, but it's all virtual. And if something goes wrong, you can just wipe down the number. It's gone. You can create another one. So nice and simple. Yeah. Chat with people by phone. Video will stop catfishing. Now, catfishing is where somebody is actually pretending to be somebody else. You try and get them on video, they're going to probably turn and say they don't want to be on video with you for some reason. That's because the picture they sent you is not them, and they can't actually put that person on a video call, of course. So it makes it super difficult for them. So if they avoid video chat for any reason, it should raise a little red flag with you. Yeah, so just be really, really cautious. If you do decide to meet somebody in person, follow the guidance. There's tons and tons of guidance out there about meeting people you don't know. Yeah, make sure friends know. Make sure you use certain types of transport. Make sure it's in a public place, etc., etc. Yeah, but follow the guidance that online dating site gives you, or go and check out other advice on the internet for that. Yeah, never if you suspect it is a romance scam, never transfer money. Yeah, if you have transferred money or you've thought about it, contact your bank, tell the bank. Yeah, they're not going to judge you for it. Yeah, in fact, they'll probably be really concerned, and they're going to try and get your money back for you in some way if they can. If you sent gift cards, contact the vendor. So if you've bought somebody Amazon gift cards like that, contact Amazon and tell them the scenario, because they don't want people using their system to scam you either. So yeah. Make sure you've tried to thwart their access to the cash. Now, listen to family and friends. If somebody's telling you something sounds too good to be true, or this person sounds too good to be true, listen to them. You might not want to hear it, but hear them out, because they may actually be seeing something you're not in the way they're talking to you, or be suspicious in the ways that you're not, because you're ingrained in the conversation, so to speak. If you decide it is a scam, cease all communications with the person. Yeah, search for the and there's other research you can do to try and work out this. You can search for their creative story. You can reverse image their scanners we've gone through. If you've decided they are scamming you, go and make that complaint. The more people that complain, the more people that are honest about the scams, the more prevalence that gets with legislators and law enforcement to go and do something about it. So be really, 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 really cautious. Now, if there is a data breach, of course, if this online site has a data breach, make sure you suspend your credit card that was associated with it. You set up ID monitoring. You delete the account, change passwords on other sites. Well, you shouldn't need to change passwords on other sites because you're using unique ones on every site. But if you're not, which I suspect some of you might not be, go and change all the passwords. Watch out for data breaches. We're going to talk about identity theft in the next presentation. So, we'll get into this in much more detail in just a moment as well. So, the last thing I'm going to leave you with is respect other people's privacy. In the same way that you want your privacy respected, make sure you're respecting other people's. If they send you a picture, don't send it to other people. Don't post it somewhere else. You don't want yours posted anywhere else, so don't do it to them either. So respect to everybody else's privacy online as well. So thank you for listening to me, attending today's discussion on this. For the people at Oasis, we have created a special offer as ESET. I think Brent may have mentioned it earlier on. I can't remember, but if he didn't, then offers.eset.com, and you can get a 30% discount if you've come along and listened to our presentations today. That would be great. I want to hear your questions. We're going to sit down now, and I'm going to answer as many questions as I possibly can. So get your questions rolling. Like I say, if you don't want to share them today, don't feel that you can't send them to me. My email address was at the front of this presentation. You can email me anytime. So hi, I hope some of that's been useful. And excuse me, I've put my glasses on because I'm trying to read your questions in front of me. And like the small text was blurry for you, unfortunately your questions become a bit blurry for me if I don't have my glasses on. So John, I see you got a question. You made a statement there. Well done that you said goodbye to somebody that asked you for money online. That's great to hear that you took that decision. Let me just skim through some of these questions. When you have Google Alerts on, what is posted, and you have a common name, what else? So what else can you put in? So for example, if I was looking for me, I would put in Tony Anscombe, California, or I could put San Francisco or where I come from. So build in some other things that are fairly unique to you, and that will start to show some of the content specific to you. It is kind of important that you narrow that down if you've got a name that's more commonly used. Somebody's asked, does my statement about free also apply to apps? Unfortunately, it does. When we're playing that game online or we're playing something through our phone that was downloaded for free, yes, they're making money somehow. I mean, this company doesn't just create an app for the sake of creating an app because they're nice guys. They're creating the app. It's either collecting data or they're upselling to you through the app, or they're displaying advertising. Just be conscious that if you can't work out what their monetization path is, i.e. if you've loaded an app and it never displays ads or there's no upsell, then likely is, if you read their privacy policy, they're probably collecting data from you, and that data is probably being sold to third parties to make money. So always, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Just bear that in mind. And that's an unfortunate thing of the modern world is, I think, in fact, I don't know whether many of you watched the documentary on Netflix about the Cambridge Analytica Facebook scandal a couple of years ago. They made a statement was data is more valuable than gold. So think about that. Your personal data is valuable to these companies. Quickly looking down to the next questions. If you find someone you wish to email with on Facebook, can you privately correspond with them? Yeah, absolutely. Of course, you can privately correspond with them. You can send them a direct message on most platforms. But like I say, if you're actually in this for the online dating purposes, then consider actually not being from your normal family Facebook account. Camera privacy. So somebody's asked the question of when I went to it, it didn't show apps. It shows what other apps have got access to the camera. So you don't want to turn off apps having access to the camera. So for example, if you use WhatsApp or Telegram or another messaging app, it will show that the green is on those as well. What that's actually saying is another app has access to your camera. But at the very top, it should give you the location services. What you want to do is just turn off location and camera so that when you take a picture, it's not storing the location in the picture. There's nothing wrong with those other services having access to your camera as well. However, I will tell you on a frequent basis, I do go down that list. And if there are apps in there that have got access to my camera from where I installed the app, and I don't think I'm ever going to use the camera with that app, then I actually turn those off. So yeah, just be conscious of what actually does have access in there as well. How do I load one of my photos on Google Images having difficulty? If you go to Google Images, click on that camera, it should pop the next box. If you're still having problems, Trish, feel free to, you've got my email address, tony.anscombe@eset.com. Drop me an email and I'll try and walk you through it over an email help, or I can even connect with you and try and do it some other way. But feel free to reach out. I'm just quickly reading some of these. Explain Google Voice. Never heard of it. How to set it up. Now, I'm a Google Voice user. I don't have a landline in my house anymore. I have a Google Voice number. If you type in Google Voice into Google, it will come out. It will take you to the Google Voice number. Basically, it takes your phone number off of it being a physical phone, i.e. the cable in your house that your cable provider gives you from their router, and it makes it a virtual number. So it's a number. If somebody calls it, it can actually ring an app on your phone. Or in my case, actually, I do still have a physical phone in the house because my wife likes to have that phone. And I have from my router a little box that converts Google Voice back to normal voice. But you can download Google Voice, the app, to your phone, set up a Google Voice number. And if somebody rings that number, that app will ring on your phone. Just like if somebody was ringing you through WhatsApp or Telegram or one of those messaging services. But it has a physical phone number attached to it. It means you can dump the phone number if you don't need it. Somebody's asked a related question here on what is a burner phone. Well, a burner phone is a phone number that you can just discard. So in a Google Voice number is something you could discard. So that's kind of a burner phone number. But if you're starting on that online dating and you want a phone that you can get rid of, you want to have a specific phone for that. So if something goes wrong, you can just literally put it in the trash and get rid of it. So that's what a burner phone is. So you can, so a phone that you don't need to keep for any specific reason. How safe was my desktop computer camera? Should I cover it when not in use? I'm smiling at that question because I don't know whether you noticed when I turned on my video, I don't know whether you saw this, you may have seen a bluish image, and that's because I was taking the piece of tape off the webcam on my machine. That's because it's just habit. I always cover the camera when not in use. It's a good thing. Yeah, it's a good thing to do. But actually make sure you have a piece of security software. So I know our product does this, ESETS does this, that looks after specifically what has access to the camera on your device. Yeah. So make sure that whatever cybersecurity product you're running has webcam protection in it. And like I say, ESETS products do. So hopefully I've answered that one for you. Somebody's made a comment. In my previous presentation, you described how information in dating profiles, likes, dislikes can be used to target you. Yeah, unfortunately, that's true. Or any information you put out online, whether it's in whether it's in that private-ish dating site or whether it's in public, unfortunately, that can become public domain and can be used against you by phishing cyber criminals. Right. Sorry, I can't read my questions quick enough here. Somebody's asked, I'm hearing we shouldn't use password generators offered by Google. Will that save them? So when you say password manager, which ones do you recommend? Well, I'm going to recommend the ESET one because we have one in our product. There is one in the browser. Lots of people do use it. I'm fully aware of that. And actually, there are some smart features in Google Chrome. So, for example, one of the features, you can you can scan your ID and it will look up on the dark web and tell you whether your passwords or your IDs have been in some way compromised and put on the dark web. Yeah. Personally, I like to have separation because you often hear about vulnerabilities in browsers. So browser software is a common attack surface for cyber criminals. So it's something they go and attack because if they can attack the browser and find a vulnerability in the browser, then they can pretty much get to anything you're doing online in the browser. So that piece of separation between a password manager and the browser, I think, is a good thing. However, if you're not going to use a specific password manager, then the password generator in Google, that provides you those lovely, long, complex passwords is much better than trying to create your own passwords that might be guessable or have real words in them, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, and somebody says, don't dump burner phones in the trash. Yes, sorry. Yeah, at least my mistake. Yes, you should responsibly recycle electronics. Yes, thank you for correcting me on that. And I, funnily enough, I actually have a box here in my office that has a bunch of electronics in it that's ready to go to the recycling when they open electronic recycling again. Because here in the Bay Area, I've seen that's been closed for some while. Somebody says I'm making them paranoid. Yes. You should be slightly paranoid. In fact, not paranoid. You should be cautious. Just always have the zero trust and be cautious of what you do online. Kind of think about what you're doing. In the same way, if you saw somebody walking down the street that you thought was shady, you might cross over. Do the same online. I'm quickly going, how to delete card information from food companies. That's an interesting question. Depends on the company. But if you can't delete the account as a California resident, you can write to the company and ask them to delete your information. There's a legal responsibility for them to do so. So just bear that in mind. Actually connect with the company if you can't work out how to do that. And I think, do you recommend a dating site? Somebody else has asked. No, I'm a happily married man, and I haven't looked at, other than from my research for this and what dating sites create, I would have no recommendation there. Danger of accepting unsolicited requests to join Skype with a stranger. Well, why would you talk to a stranger? So just delete. If somebody's connecting with you and you don't know them, just actually delete the call. Stop the call. I'm just looking further down. What is the Google Voice privacy policy? Are they listening to calls? How is that data used? That's a great question. I don't believe they listen to the calls. Whether they use the call log data, I don't know. I will go and investigate that one, and hopefully watch out for a blog for me on that very, very subject. I will say, I use Google Voice literally just as a backup phone in the house. Most of my calls these days are on a cell phone, as I'm sure everybody's are. It was just that my wife still wanted a phone in the house. Somebody's asking, would a burner phone be something like a track phone? Yes, a no contract, pay per minute, sold in Walmart. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly the type of thing I'm talking about. And I think that pretty much covers off most of the questions. And somebody has said, check out Consumer Reports for a great article a few years ago on dating sites. Thank you, Elise. That's very helpful. Yes, very trusted source. Consumer Reports is a very trusted source. Yeah, good place to go and check. They've probably done more in-depth research on the business practices. And with that, I think I'm talking to Amy now, who's moderating for me. I think I've answered all the questions, Amy, so I think we're good to close down if that's okay. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening. And I think we've got one more presentation shortly after this, so please come and join that last presentation.
Hi everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Russell Rowe. I'm a certified personal trainer and group fitness instructor, and I'm going to be showing you a few stretches here between the presentations. For this set of stretches, we're going to stay seated on the chair because some people can't stand up. They have limitations that don't allow them to stand up. But everyone can do these stretches if you want. So you're just going to put your left leg out in front of you, nice and straight so that there's no bend in that knee. You're going to flex your foot back towards your face. You're going to keep your back straight and head up. You're going to breathe out and gently, slowly lean forwards until you feel a comfortable stretch in the back of your upper outstretched leg. So the back of your upper outstretched leg. Make sure that knee is nice and straight, or your leg is nice and straight with no bend in your knee, and just hold that stretch for a few seconds. You should feel that in the back of your upper leg. All right, great. Now come back up. Put your right leg out in front of you. Again, make sure that leg is nice and straight with no bend in your knee. Flex your foot back towards your face. Keep your back straight and head up. Breathe out. And gently, slowly lean forwards again until you feel that comfortable stretch in the back of your other upper outstretched leg. And again, try and keep that front leg nice and straight so that there's no bend in that knee, and hold that for a few seconds. Make sure that this doesn't hurt you. If it does, back off a little bit. You always want to keep that pain-free range of motion when you're doing your stretches or any exercises. Perfect. Come back up. Okay, now you're going to sit on the edge of your chair here, and you're going to hold onto the back of your chair, and then you're going to push your chest forwards, so we're stretching out your chest and shoulder muscles here. So you should feel that nice stretch in your shoulders and in your chest, and hold that for a few seconds. All right, good. Stop doing that. Okay, put one arm behind you and you can scratch your back. So now if you can do it, you can grab your elbow and pull it back behind you. If that's too hard to do, you can just put your hand on your upper arm and push it back a little bit. So here we're stretching out the back of your upper arm, which is called your triceps muscles. So hold that for a few seconds. Good, and switch arms. Put your other arm behind you, scratch your back. Either grab your elbow and pull it back behind you, or if you can't do that, you can just push on your arm, stretching out your other triceps muscles here. Great, thanks for doing my stretches with me, and enjoy the rest of your presentations.
Hi, I'm Tony Anscombe, Chief Security Evangelist for a cybersecurity company called ESET. We make the software that's on your machine, that anti-malware software, I hope it's on your machine, protecting you from cyber criminals. Now, today I'm going to be talking to you about protecting your home and family. Realistically, we're going to talk about all those devices, all those different things that you might bring into the home and actually connect to your internet connection, your Wi-Fi system at home. If you've got a question during this presentation, I will be hanging around at the end of this presentation and answering some Q&A, and I'd love to hear from you there. Or if you're a little embarrassed, a little shy, or got a question that you're not too sure about in a public forum, feel free to email me, tony.anscombe@eset.com, and there's my Twitter handle there as well. But like I say, don't be shy. Actually come and ask the question after the presentation if you want to. So just how connected are we? Well, if you actually look at the world, there are 7.9 billion mobile phones globally. Now, this was actually a conservative estimate. If you start looking this number up on the internet, it ranges from anywhere from about 8 billion through to 10.5 billion. So I'm taking the lower number there. Now, if you compare that actually to the number of people on the planet, there's only 7.6 billion people. So actually, there's more phones than there are people. Now, if you consider some countries, they don't have great mobile coverage, and in some cultures, they don't have as many phones, and then you've got kids in nearly every country who are too young for a phone. That means a lot of us, in fact, like me, are probably carrying 2 mobile phones. I carry one for work, and I carry one personally. It means, when I do actually get out hiking or whatever it is to relax, then I can leave that work phone somewhere else and just carry a personal phone. So we're super connected, more mobile phones than there are people. Now, what about the USA? So there are 328 million phones in the USA, and with a population of 318 million. So again, you can see that trend is actually here in the US as well. And I mentioned we're going to talk about connected devices. Now, in 2020, it's estimated there's around about 31 billion IoT devices. We're going to come back to what IoT is in a moment. But basically, a device that's connected to the internet or connected in some way. So 31 billion of those. Now, if we look at the predictions for next year and beyond, next year it's estimated that will go up by 4 billion devices. So think of the number of people out there buying, connected doorbells or whatever it might be, that's actually taking that number from 3.1 to 3.5 billion. And that could even be things like road infrastructure, sensors, air quality sensors, etc. And we're going to look at some of what all these things might be in a moment. Now, it's predicted by 2025, this number will be 75 billion. So there's an absolute ramp up of stuff that people are connecting, whether that's connected devices in the home or whether that's connected in society. Now, I want you to think for a moment. I want you to take this challenge of thinking about how many connected devices you have in your household. So if we look at the Internet of Things, so i.e. your house and all the different connected things. So what could they be? For example, it starts with a router, doesn't it? So hanging off that cable that comes into the house somewhere is a router. That's one device. So where does it spread out from there? That router may have some wired connections, maybe to a TV streaming box next to it, or everything could be running off of Wi-Fi. That could have some Wi-Fi speakers, maybe some security cameras or web cameras. It could have a games console. You've then got your laptops and desktops, tablets and phones that will all connect to it. Your TV, if you've got a smart TV, that may be connected as well. You may even, down at the other end, you may even have connected toys. If you've got kids or grandkids visiting you, you may have some interactive toys that they use that are connected as well. Now, when I ran this experiment in my house, my wife is a bit of a technophobe, so we don't actually have the smart house thing. But I went through our house and looked to see how many connected devices there were. So the smart TV, and we've got a streaming box next to the smart TV. In fact, we've got two streaming boxes. One has a DVD player on it and one doesn't. Then I've got a DSLR camera, something probably we don't think of, but it's got Wi-Fi on it. So there's a connected device. You've got a printer. We've got a couple of laptops in the house, a tablet. When I got to the end of counting the different devices, I had 22 different devices. Now I was not including any work-related device. So that's really important to understand, because those work-related devices, typically could be in an office where I'm actually a remote worker, especially at the moment. But those all my ESET devices were not included in that 22. So how many do you have? I reckon most people have around 10. I've seen data out there that suggests the average American has somewhere between 8 and 10. But I actually reckon if we went through and looked for the obscure devices you don't think about being connected, we'd find 10 in most people's homes, at least. So how do these connected devices work? What actually happens? So if you look at, let's take something like a webcam for an IoT device that's a webcam. And let's talk about, in fact, before we go there, what could an IoT device actually be? Connected fridge. It could be a connected kettle, a connected coffee maker. I recently bought a washer, and that washer there was a washer on offer that had the option of having a Wi-Fi connection so that you can control it over the internet. So you could do the washing to time with when you come home. You may have a connected car. You may be able to actually remotely start your car through an app. So if you're living in a cold environment, when you go out to get in the car, one, it's de-iced itself, but also two, the engine's warmed up, the inside's warmed up, and actually you're moving from the comfort of your home into the comfort of your car. So there's tons and tons of connected stuff. You might have a doorbell with a camera on it so you can see who's at the door. There are so many. In fact, it's starting to become difficult to buy devices that don't have the option of being connected. So let's think about how they work. The majority of them are while they're intelligent devices, they're actually relatively dumb at the same time. They use the internet for their communication, and they use the internet to store their data. So they really are just kind of a device that's carrying out the function that it was designed for. So think of the webcam, all it's doing is filming and capturing. But the actual storage of the video is happening somewhere else on the internet. And then you're viewing that down on another device, whether that's a laptop, you're signing into a cloud service, or you've got an app on your phone, you can see the cameras in your house, the security system, etc., and who's moving around in which room. So now we've got this triangulation. So this is kind of the typical communication of an IoT device. So what's the risk? Why is a cybersecurity guy standing up here talking about the risk of IoT devices? Well, firstly, these devices are always on and they're always connected because they're devices around our home. So we don't actually think about disconnect. It's not like the laptop where we just shut it off, is it? Or some other devices where we actually turn them off. These devices are typically always on. So they're always connected, always on, and malware on them is hard to detect and analyze because these devices they're not traditional. You can't download more stuff to them, you can't do other things. So it's actually difficult to find out if a cyber criminal has managed to get in and do something to one of these devices. And I'm going to talk about an example of that a bit later on. So the devices are less sophisticated. Computing power is increasing though. So if you think about early smart TVs, they were pretty basic, but now you can download your own apps, play games on them, you can browse, all sorts of things. So they're becoming, as these devices are becoming smarter as we go on. So is there a risk? Well, yes, unfortunately there is. Somebody can actually try and access the device and control it. They can abuse the device, and I'm going to show you some examples of each one of these. They're collecting personal data, and that's something we should always be concerned about. And you might be over or inadvertently sharing data without understanding that actually this device is sharing maybe some personal data that you're not thinking of. And I've got some examples of that as well. So let's take that first one, accessing and controlling the device. Well, there's this great website, and I'm sure you've seen news stories of about webcams that you can access on the internet that are not secure. I don't mean ones that overlook the beach so you can see whether the beach is crowded or whether it's a nice day, but ones in people's homes. So if you look, there's this website called Shodan, and this website, if you register on there, you can actually start looking at devices. It's basically a great big list of devices that haven't been secured correctly. So i.e. they're using the default password and they're using the default ID, or somehow they've been left open, or they've got known vulnerabilities on them, so somebody can access them through one of those known vulnerabilities. So if I look on Shodan and I look specifically for webcams here in the US, I can find webcams. Now, unfortunately, this picture isn't very good. I think it looks a bit like a space picture. But this picture is actually of somebody's backyard. Yeah. And as you can see there, I've blurred out the IP number because it's a camera that overlooks somebody's backyard. So I'm now looking real time at somebody's backyard. Now, if I look further around and look for other devices, as you can see, I can find this one in somebody's lounge. Yeah. So not particularly secure. And this is an open list. And if I delved in further, yeah, sure, I can find some in children's bedrooms. So like a camera that's looking at a picture of a cot. That's not uncommon because parents like to be able to check on their baby without actually going or disturbing the baby. So there are these open devices. So if you don't secure them correctly, they get added to this list automatically because it's scouring and scanning the internet for them. Yeah, and somebody might be in your home using those cameras or whatever else it is they do on those devices. Can the device be abused? Well, the best example of this actually was back in 2018, the Mariah botnet. Now, a botnet is a collection of devices that are used to create, let's think of it as a supercomputer. So all the resources of all these different devices all over the world are joined together to do a certain task. Now, if you go on the dark web, you can rent out these botnets. So in this instance, the hackers had infiltrated some IoT devices like webcams, and they created malware in memory. So those webcams that I'm just showing you there, they'd exploited them. They'd found vulnerabilities so they could launch their own attacks, so they could use those devices to go and attack something else. And how do you attack something else with a device that's relatively simple? Well, that's easy. You generate traffic and you create what's called a denial of service. So if I send 50 people to your front door and they all knock the door at the same time, you can't cope. There's too many people to actually see all at the same time. And that's what a denial of service is. It's just too much traffic. Yeah, sent to a website, and then the website becomes inaccessible. They can't cope with the number of people there. So what the Mariah botnet did this, and it took down large chunks of the internet. So it was actually a coordinated attack. There was about 600,000 devices. So think about that, 600,000 IoT devices in people's homes or in their businesses that was used to attack the actual core, the infrastructure of the internet. So is there a risk of abuse? Yes, unfortunately. Now, I mentioned oversharing. What about oversharing? Well, take this. Think about your morning routine. If you are one of these people that like to have these connected devices, so you wake up at 7 a.m., of course you may wake up earlier or later, and you've got a connected coffee machine. It's already brewed the coffee. Lovely. You're waking up to that gorgeous smell in the house, and you're getting your first cup of coffee, or in my instance, maybe a cup of tea. Yeah. Then you jump in the shower and you stream some music. You put on your favorite tunes and start going about getting ready for your day. So we've already got a connected coffee machine. We're already streaming some music. So think about the data that we're sharing with these different companies or through different apps about actually how we live our lives. Then I book a table, or I order takeout for lunch. Then I get directions to the tennis courts, so I'm going to go and have a game of tennis, through maps. And think about that. I've now been to an ordering system. I've got into maps. So again, another 2 bits of information in here about my day. I drive through a toll booth. On the way, the toll booth is is using my smart devices in my car to tag and pay for the tolls. So again, there's another piece of information that's flowing. And then when I do get to the tennis courts and play, I'm using a fitness tracker so that at the end of the tennis I can turn and say, I can have that extra bread roll or that extra piece of dinner or a dessert after dinner tonight because actually I burnt off those calories. So I'm tracking my fitness too. Yeah. So now think about the overshare. If on all of those devices I decided to click on the share publicly or share with third parties, I may be oversharing. So think about the picture somebody could aggregate together about your week if you've got too many of these devices and you're sharing all the data from them. Now you might be inadvertently sharing as well. Now I don't know whether you remember, there was a couple of years back, there was this story that hit the news about Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan where a group of soldiers were using a fitness tracker, a jogging app, and that jogging app was actually tracking their movements around the base because it was looking at their running patterns so they could share them with other people. And inadvertently, they were sharing actually the boundary of the base because they were running around the boundary of the base. Now, of course, this was quickly locked down and it was pretty much removed. But did anybody think about this when they started using the technology? No, it was only some bright person actually saw, hey, hang on a minute, that's an inadvertently oversharing. Now, how does that affect you? How does that affect you in your home? Well, recently here in California, of course, we've had lots of smoke. So I have been an avid user of the Purple Air website. So if we look at the Purple Air website, you can track it down to an individual sensor. Now this one is half a dozen streets away from me, and as you can see, I know this sensor is in this house. So I know the person that lives in this house actually has a Purple Air quality sensor in their property. So I now know something about them. Now, you may have had one of those phone calls at some stage that talk about, this is Microsoft, we want to update your machine and you've got some problem on it, and it's a scam. But now imagine if they phoned up and turned and said, hi, this is Purple Air. We know you've got one of our sensors and it needs a software update. The current reading on your Purple Air sensor is blah, 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 and it says 5 on it. You're going to think, hey, hang on a minute. It actually does sound like somebody from Purple Air. And this is true of weather monitoring stations too. So do those people, when they share this data to provide that great big public map, do they think about actually the information they're sharing, that they've got these devices in their households as well? In fact, somebody may come past and try and steal one of those devices, especially if it's an outdoor, like an air quality sensor or a weather station. So you may be oversharing that data and that information. Now, the other thing lots of people have in their homes are digital home assistants. Now, this is, let me just explain what I mean by a home assistant. That's a Google Home, an Amazon Alexa, Microsoft have Cortana, Apple have Siri. In fact, I've just got a new set-top box for my TV so I can stream different channels. And that has a remote on it that's got voice on it as well, so I can control it by voice. Now, this is a digital home assistant. So if you put a home assistant in that middle of that picture of your IoT devices, then now you've got maybe one device that controls all the other devices and may actually be having that big picture of all the data that's being collected. So you need to think about a lot of privacy stuff going on here. Now, one thing I should say is these digital assistants are actually very secure. Our research labs took these things apart and they looked inside of them, they tried to break them, they tried to find vulnerabilities in them. And while they actually did find some vulnerabilities, the general consensus of these devices is they get automatic updates, they strong encryption, they're very secure. These companies have actually done a good job at building these devices. But the issue is privacy concerns. Because if you look at how they operate, they're listening for the wake-up word continually. And actually, MIT did a study on this. What they did was they took Netflix programs and ran Netflix programs at these things all day long in a lab scenario. And they removed the wake-up words from the programs, and still the devices started 19 times a day without the wake-up words. and and listened to what was going on. So 19 times a day, that's quite a lot. And actually, while the data they collect is not stored by those companies in the way that we might think, the interactions, certainly with Amazon Alexa, it stores the interaction, so you can go back and look at the last interaction on the app. So that stored interaction could be valuable to a cyber criminal. And if we think about the different things that actually, for example, Alexa skills might be linked to, your bathroom skills, it might know your birthday, your health, it might know your bank, who you bank with, might even know your social security number. It knows your schedule because it knows when you're home and when you're not. So there's a huge wealth of information that these devices are actually collecting, especially if you're one of the people that are currently working from home. If you've got one in the house while you're working from home, if you're having a conference call or something, I'd switch it off. In fact, I'd switch these things off quite frequently anyway. If I was sitting on the couch and didn't need to worry about anything or didn't have any questions, I would probably put this thing in mute. And that leads me to my last presentation. By the way, the last webinar I did for Oasis was on identity theft. So I'm just making the point here, this rich information that could be collected by a cyber criminal, in the worst situation, if they manage to collect all of this together, could actually lead to a very rich, unfortunately, set of data that could be used for identity theft against you. And I'd recommend, if you're interested in how to avoid identity theft, go and listen to that presentation as well. So how do we fix this? Right, that's that was all the bad side. That was kind of the risk and what's wrong. So how do we fix this? Well, firstly, know what's connected. That's the first task anybody needs to do. So this is actually a picture from an ESET product. Our ESET antivirus product has something in it called Connected Home Monitor, and it will scan your network and it will come up with a picture of all the different devices that are connected to your home network. Now, there are other pieces of software out there that will do this too, as well, by the way. But I'm going to use our own software as the example, and forgive me on that. So, this is the device I'm on. It's attached to the router. Then it can see some phones and some other desktops. It can see some smart speakers. It can see Android phones and TVs and printers and a PlayStation, etc., etc. So this picture will grow. And what Connected Home Monitor does is it tries to be the hacker. So it kind of goes to those devices and looks to see whether those devices are known to have default passwords, default IDs, or known vulnerabilities, either firmware, actually out of date. So, and it will warn you. And what it will do is it will show you a screen like this. It will show you the device and it will turn around and say, in this instance, it's actually showing you something rather technical. But it will come up and turn and say, you need to change the password on this device. So it will allow you to prompt you to go around each of those devices and actually start fixing it. So Connected Home Monitor within an ESET product, but like I say, there are other, if you haven't got that, in fact, I know certainly some of the cable providers also have apps as well. So if you don't know how to do that, email me and I'll, in fact, at the end of this, you can try out our software for a discount or for free. So I'm going to give you a recommendation at the end as well. So fix what's connected, use strong passwords. Change the defaults, most important, Change the default, and where possible, use two-factor authentication. So if it uses that IoT service uses a cloud service, then protect it with that extra layer of authentication where you've got to use your phone with a little code on it or whatever it might be to actually authenticate, to actually access the system. So fix the strong passwords, two-factor authentication, update the software on the device. Can't stress that enough. When they ship it, it may have taken 6 months for it to be sold on the shelf. By the time you plug it in, you've run it for 6 months, the software in it may actually be out of date. So make sure you're downloaded the latest version of software and update the software. Enable encryption. If it's not enabled by default, enable encryption. If it's got any options saying encrypt this, encrypt that, make sure all those are on. If there are pieces of the device you don't use, so for example, just say you've got a camera, a security camera, and you never want it to use audio, maybe it's got the function of a microphone in it, switch the microphone off. Only use the pieces of devices that you actually functionally want to use. Search the internet for device vulnerability. So bob into Google, device X model number, blah, 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 vulnerabilities. Just the word, just that string of words, and you should instantly be able to see some articles if there are vulnerabilities, and the manufacturer will probably tell you how to fix them as well, or somebody on the internet will, the internet has a wealth of resource out there. Somebody will be telling you how to actually fix those vulnerabilities. And where available, install security software. Most important, and I'll give you an example there, because a lot of these devices, you can't install security software, so you're unable to do that. But for example, ESET, we have a piece of software that you can load on a smart TV to protect the TV. So where possible, install security software and let that do some of the protection for you. I can't state this enough. Always think about privacy. So think about what the device is sharing, how it's sharing it, and where it's storing it, whether it's encrypted. Make sure you've secured the cloud, not only the device, but the cloud account that goes alongside of that. So if there's a password on an app to access that cloud account, make sure it's a good, strong password, and make sure you're thinking about actually the other end of the device. So how you're accessing the information. So what about regulation and certification? Because this is a huge growing industry. As you saw, there's going to be billions and billions of these devices added. 4 billion between this year and next year is a huge number. Regulation and certification is super important. Now, what about kids stuff? So let me give you an example here of a kid's IoT device. Some of the toy companies make really interactive toys. A few years ago, you had an interactive Barbie doll by Mattel. But there were issues, there were privacy issues and concerns around toys like that. So for example, what happens when you unbox the toy, you give it to your grandchildren or your children, and they pick up the toy, they turn it on, and it's interactive. So you can't turn around and say, "Hey Barbie, how's your day going?" And Barbie's going to turn and say, "My day's going well, thanks." And you're going to know who your name is. So there's this interaction that's been using artificial intelligence. I mean, isn't that superb for engagement of the toy with the kids as well? I mean, it's superb. There are certifiers here in the US, Kids Safe certified products. They work with the FTC as well, so it's got kind of a government-approved certification that gives toys that seal of approval to turn and say, the company have thought about privacy, they've done it the right way, the device, to the best of our knowledge, doesn't have vulnerabilities, and put their stamp on it. So that's a good thing to look for, Kids Safe, to keep those toys and stuff safe. And that's super important if you've got connected toys. And one of the issues, in fact, with that connected Barbie was what happens when somebody else comes around and they start talking to the Barbie too. Is it recording their voice or only your kid's voice? There's all sorts of strange ways to look at privacy in there. Now, what about regulation? Government's doing anything? Well, the good news is actually California have been pretty bold here, and they made on the 1st of January 2020, they passed some legislation that turned and said, out of the box, an IoT device has to have a unique password. So you can't ship all these devices with the same password. As a manufacturer, they all have to have different passwords. And actually, when you switch it on, it should ask you to change the password. So already you've got ship with a unique and change when you first plug it in. They've also looked at whether it's appropriate to the nature of the device, what it's collecting and how it's working is appropriate, and the information collected by the device is appropriate in context with the device. So if I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but something you think like a thermostat doesn't have a camera and a microphone on it, so it's not recording you or doing something else, that it's only controlling the temperature. So it's not doing something you don't expect it to be doing. And the device has to be designed to protect itself. So it has to have built-in security features to protect itself from misuse. Now, other governments around the world also have researched this and put out guidance on here. They talk about vulnerability policies. So the companies creating these devices have to have vulnerability policies. They have to provide software updates, and they have to provide them over time as well. So not just for the next year, but over the next 3 to 5 years, the expected life of the device. Secure storage for credentials and data. They need to communicate securely, and you have to be able to delete your stuff. So you have to have easy deletion of the data that they're collecting. So just a point here that actually, I liken this back to the days of early Wi-Fi. You remember when people started putting Wi-Fi networks in at home, and you could drive down the street and pretty much connect to anybody's Wi-Fi network at home because they didn't have encryption or passwords. Now you go down the street and everything's locked. Yeah, I think we're kind of there at this. All these connected devices we're putting in our homes are kind of at that point at this moment in time where, in 3 to 5 years' time, I think this will be a completely different scenario. Regulations and legislation will have stepped in, vendors will have stepped up, and actually we'll be in a different spot. So if you're going to go out and buy one, and you should do, because embrace technology, use some of this technology. Research the device, look for the vulnerabilities online, check that the vendor updates their devices regularly, read the privacy policy, understand what data you're sharing and how you're sharing it, limit what you are sharing in any way possible, and don't tell your assistant anything, or don't tell your assistant everything, I should say, because actually your assistant doesn't need to know everything, do they? They only need to know the things that are important. So just really, really consider what you're using your digital assistant for. So thank you for attending. It's been a delight to talk to you today. Here's an offer from ESET. I mentioned our software through that presentation. You can come and get a discounted version of our software from offers.eset.com/Oasis. I think there's a 30% discount in there. But I'm now free to answer any questions, because I'm sure some of you have got some great devices at home that I haven't thought of or haven't heard of. So come and ask me those questions and we can have that discussion. Thank you for listening. So hi, thank you for listening to the presentation. That was great. Excuse me, I'm going to put my glasses on so I can read your questions. One of those great things of age, isn't it? I need them to read. First question I got up here from Marcia was, what is a chief security evangelist? Well, that's me. Sorry, my British sarcasm there. I have a wonderful job with ESET where I get to come and do presentations, give presentations like this, help people out. I also give more serious presentations about threat landscapes and malware and security to industry events as well. So basically, an educator is probably the best way of thinking of it, educating on cybersecurity events. I have some day jobs as well that I do for the company. Couple of other questions in here. A few people having blurry images. I believe all these presentations, by the way, are being posted in high definition as well. So if you want to go back and look at any of those. And sorry, I'm just quickly scanning the questions. I just bought a toy that is a robot balloon dog toy and looked all over the box for an instruction book. Can't find anything that tells me if this records things. No, so the toy will have a manufacturer's name on it. And if you take the manufacturer's name and go to their website, find the toy and read the privacy policy, or if it's asking you to create an online account to go alongside the toy and connect the toy to the internet in some way, when you actually connect the toy to the internet or create the account on the internet, it should actually offer you some terms and conditions, or the terms and conditions will link to a privacy policy. That's the only way of finding out what data might be being collected about you. What about smart key, entry door safety, or keypad safety? Well, as with any of these IoT devices, go and look before purchasing smart key or door safety or keypads or ring doorbells or whatever it might be. Go and actually do the vulnerability search like I suggested. Actually go onto Google, type in the name of the product you're thinking of buying and vulnerabilities. And typically the internet's really good for that. You're going to find in forums, if there has been an issue, somebody will bring those issues up, tell you what the issues are. And more importantly, the company might actually be telling you they fixed them, because companies are getting smarter and getting quicker in fixing the vulnerabilities that people find, which is good. It also, that leads me on to I think I said this in the presentation, make sure you're continually updating these devices to the latest software. All software has issues. So, we tend to think that it doesn't, but make sure that you're keeping them up to date. What's the significance of having a VPN? Right, okay, that's a great question. A VPN is the long term is a virtual private network. What it basically means is from your laptop, and I'm sorry, I'm looking down at my laptop here, from your laptop out to the internet then becomes encrypted. So if you go and sit in a coffee shop and you're using public Wi-Fi, which is exactly that, public, that's unencrypted, so you just connected to it, and you've got internet access, it's not encrypted. So somebody else sitting on the same public Wi-Fi network basically could use a piece of software to sit there and look at all the traffic going across this network. You can encrypt that piece of traffic over the public network. It doesn't encrypt it all the way through to where you're going, because it encrypts it to wherever the VPN stops. So the company that's providing it then goes out across the internet again. It stops somebody locally accessing that data you might be sending. Do smart TVs have cameras? Yes, some of them might do. You look on the front of the TV. That's usually a pretty good sign. If it's got, it will have somewhere on a little lens on the front of the TV. But if in doubt, take the model number of the TV and look it up on the vendor's website. It will tell you whether it's got a camera, because I'm sure they will sell it as a benefit. A lot of TVs do have, of course, because people like to do video conferencing, especially through all these lockdowns and stuff. I mean, video conferencing, I don't know about you, but I've used an awful lot of video conferencing to stay in touch with family and friends. Somebody else has asked a question here on reward play. Should my grandkids use them? So these are apps that give you money back or give you something back if you sit there and play them because basically they're using your time. Those apps are making money somehow, whether it's tracking your location, whether it's taking data off your phone, they might be collecting your browsing history, but your data, I can tell you now, is what's allowing them to give you some money back. They've worked out an algorithm, and you've got to play them an awful lot to make it worthwhile. So just be aware, if you do go down that path, you do use an app like that, you're the product. Your data is actually what you're getting money for. It's not your playing of the game that you're getting money for. It's actually your data. So I'd be really cautious about that. Somebody else has asked how to trash and scrub old devices. This is a great question. This is quite a complicated question. It depends on the device. As I recall, I wrote a blog on this a couple of years back, so maybe we can dig that one out. But in basis, if it's a laptop, so something that's if it's a device that stores the information. So like phones, you can put them back to factory defaults, but take out the memory cards if you've added a memory card, because factory defaults doesn't scrub the memory card. On a laptop, a little bit more complex, because there are pieces of software that you can use to actually trash the hard disk on the laptop. And I'd recommend if you type in my name to Google and look at scrubbing, trashing old devices, I think you'll probably find that blog. If not, email me, tony.anscombe@eset.com, and I'll get the details across to you. But it is a little bit more complex. If in doubt, take it to the local computer shop and get them to actually scrub the hard disk before you throw out the device. It's got lots of personal data on there, so be cautious of that. Does a TV need to be secured? If it's a smart TV, then yes, I will put security on it. I've actually demonstrated a smart TV coin mining, so a piece of malware on a smart TV that even when you switch the TV off, the TV remains on. It just switches the screen off and it continues to run the malware in background. So yeah, absolutely, you should secure it. Bear in mind, it's also got access probably up to other streaming services, etc. What does IoT stand for? The Internet of Things is a broader term for everything that's connected to the internet. Typically, it's used these days to describe things commonly in your home, so doorbells and cameras, such like. I'm just quickly going down some of the other questions here. What is Wi-Fi? Should you use connected cable or watch or use Wi-Fi connection? Well, Wi-Fi is wireless internet connectivity. So I'm sitting here. In fact, I'm on a cabled connection at this moment in time to make sure that I'm talking. We don't get interrupted. But Wi-Fi is, the router in your home. You can move around your home without wires and be connected to the internet. That's what Wi-Fi is. Doesn't my router provide a firewall against hacking? It should do. It depends on the router, how old it is. Your router should also have your password on it. You should set a strong password on it, and you should make sure the firewall is actually turned on. Super important. On a public network, is only the app I'm using visible to others, or can anything else on my phone be seen? Potentially, yes. If you're connected and you're not running a firewall, or your phone is not protected in the right way, potentially somebody could try and connect and get to other parts of it. But if you've got security product on there, it should be stopping that. Is it safe to respond to email surveys? Well, that really depends on where the email surveys come from. And I think that's pretty much all the questions I can ask. If I've missed any in here, I had it. There's a question here, right? Somebody's actually asking a question about ESET products. So let me answer that question for you. A question about installing ESET products. Ring our support team. Our support team will answer you for free if you're a licensed customer. Please just go onto our website, pick up the phone number, and pick up the support team. If you have any problems, feel free to email me, and I'll put you in touch with a member of our support team. Not a problem. So tony.anscombe@eset.com. Do you know if Alexa password is the same as Amazon? If not, please say how you change an Alexa password. It's a good question, actually. I don't have Alexa, but I will find out the question of that because I now want to know the answer to it. So I may actually put a tweet out if you're on Twitter about that one after the presentation. And somebody else has asked, is mesh Wi-Fi more secure than regular Wi-Fi? Interesting question. I have a mesh Wi-Fi system in my house. It's not so much for security. The mesh Wi-Fi system is for coverage. It means you can have multiple Wi-Fi spots around the house and get really, really good coverage around the house. So that's primarily the benefit of mesh Wi-Fi. With that, thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and I'm going to leave you here. Have a great day.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's important lessons about computer security. I'm Bruce Peckman, the muscle man of technology, and I sure hope you enjoyed Tony's presentation on online security today, and you now have a better understanding of keeping yourself safe, keeping yourself free from identity theft, and how to protect your connected home and family. And by the way, I'm going to break Tony's rule right now. I'm going to give you my home address. I live right off of Twin Peaks Road. Oh, that was bad. Okay, folks, we're in the most exciting part of the whole morning because we have got giveaways, things that you can win. So providing that all registered participants are eligible, the winners are going to be randomly selected in a few minutes. But first, let me tell you about the first giveaway of the morning. This is the Optic Eye Wand. And this is a portable UVC cleaner. This is from a local company called Optech. This is what it looks like, and it's really quality. This is made out of like anodized aluminum. So all you have to do is just press this button and the back, and you'll see the lights are going to come on. Never stare at the lights, but this is great for doing a quick disinfectant of your phone, of your keys, even your toothbrush. So it's just a wonderful item. And one other thing that's really nice is that UVC, by the way, the cycle time is 50 seconds. UVC technology is wonderful because the beautiful thing about it is it doesn't require any harsh chemicals. So that's something real great. The next thing that we have to give away this morning is something from a company called Jabra, and they're one of the leaders in headsets and audio technology. Well, this one is really cool. This is the Jabra Evolve 265 mono wireless headset. So let me tell you a little bit about it. First of all, it actually has a boom microphone, so it's super accurate. Your calls are going to be crystal clear. It has an integrated busy light, so if you're on the phone, it'll light up so people don't interrupt you. The battery life is about 10 hours, and the beauty about this is because it's the latest Bluetooth stack, you'll be able to not only hook it up to your phone, but to your computer or your tablet or any other Bluetooth device. So a really nice product to have over there. And again, this is from Jabra, and it's super comfortable too. I think the headsets are made out of like a leatherette cushion, so really a cool thing. Now, the last thing I want to talk to you about is our beautiful giveaway we want to thank Sony from. And this is an additional opportunity to win this beautiful immersible wearable speaker. I always put it around my neck so you can get an idea what it looks like. And be sure, the only way you can win this, and tomorrow you're going to be sent a survey. You have to do that post-event survey at the end of Friday tomorrow in order to be eligible to win this. We're going to have 2 winners. Again, that's tomorrow, Friday on the 23rd. So this is wonderful. You could experience movies, television, and you could look it up. This is this is the SRS WS1 by Sony. You will be drooling over it. If you win it, you'll be very lucky. So let's get on to today's winners. Okay, hold on. Okay, we have a winner for the Jabra Evolve 2 65 mono wireless headset, and the winner is Lorenzo Bax. Lorenzo, you are so lucky to win this. Lorenzo Bax gets the Jabra Evolve 2 65 mono headset and the Optic Eye Wand. Who's the winner? Nicole Fay. Nicole Fay, you are the lucky winner of the day. I expect you to be jumping up and down. Congratulations to all of today's winners, and we'll have more great prizes tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you for joining us. Tomorrow is our last day of technology learning. Our theme will be Smart Home and Smart Wallet. Join us at 8:45 Pacific Standard Time. And remember, it is not too late to invite your friends and neighbors to learn with us. Go to SanDiegoOasis.org and register. See you in the morning.